Hi, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 94. I'm speaking with the best-selling author of Getting Things Done, the productivity expert, David Allan. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Okay, so welcome to a brand new episode. I'm really excited about this one because I keep getting people asking about productivity tips and things like that. Obviously, I've contributed a lot, and I thought it would be good to get some insights from other people who specialize in productivity and have written a lot of really solid content that has stood the test of time. And David Allan has written the best-selling book, Getting Things Done, which Time Magazine dubbed it the defining self-help business book of its time. He's had his book published in 28 different languages and is also considered the leading authority in the fields of organization and personal productivity. And I stole all of that from his About page, but I've had his book for quite a long time, and it was really cool to get to chat to him about a lot of his insights and really just get a fresh perspective on ways to get more time out of your day. And I'm really excited about this episode because I feel like a lot of us always feel like we don't have enough time and we want to do all these things, but we use time as our excuse as to why we can't go after the things that we really care about. Now, we all have the same amount of time in our day, and therefore, if I can get my stuff done, you should be able to as well. And more importantly, it's about really reflecting on where your time's going. If this was your finances, then you would be really trying to balance your budget and figure out why you're always broke. But I feel like with time, we don't really think about that too much. So this episode, I'm hoping you get a lot from. Bust out the pen and paper if you can. Otherwise, there are in-depth show notes on this episode at allanmckay.com/94. In addition to that, you can read up on other episodes pertaining to this on there too, and also just access any links that we mention during this episode. So again, if you want to check it out, go to allanmckay.com/94. Now, I mentioned this before, but if you can take a moment to leave a review on iTunes, I would be greatly appreciated. It would mean the world to me. So just simply go into iTunes and look for this episode. There should be a link in the show notes, and you can leave a review there. Okay, so lots of cool episodes coming up soon. Lots of cool announcements as well. But for now, let's dive in. Okay, just quickly, one of the biggest problems that we face as artists is figuring out how much we're worth. Typically, the situation is that we go into job interviews and we're asked how much we're going to charge. We either shoot ourselves in the foot by saying that we charge less than we're worth, so that way we get the gig, and indirectly end up leaving tens of thousands of dollars accumulatively over time on the table, rather than actually asking what we should be charging. At the same time, you don't want to alienate your employers by asking for too much and leaving yourself out in the cold. So what I've done is I put together a website, check it out, www.vfxrates.com, and this is a chance for you to be able to put in your experience, your discipline, the location you're working, all the good things that will give you a fairly accurate idea of what you and everyone else should be charging in your discipline. This is something that I'm going to continue to build and flesh out over time, but the key thing is actually that I don't want to just showcase how much you should be worth, but also show you and hand you the tools to grow beyond that and to learn to negotiate better, to learn to ask for the right amount of money in the right way. There's lots of additional tools and information I want to hand over to you. Everything's free. Check it out, vfxrates.com. Put in your information and you'll instantly get notified of how much money you should be charging per hour as a VFX artist. vfxrates.com. Cool. So one thing just to start out, I'd love to know is like a bit about your background. Like, how did you kind of get to where you are, and was it always kind of something that was aligned with what you're targeting to do, or is it more something you fell into?
I fell into it, but only because of two reasons. One is I had a love of clear space. In the martial arts and my own spiritual and meditative practices, I discovered how cool it was to actually get your head clear and have nothing on your mind and have the freedom and sort of peace of mind, if you will, to be able to let your mind wander into the depths and sophistications of places that it could go when the world got quieted. So I loved that. Then I got involved in the professional world. I didn't kind of know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I helped a lot of other people who did, then discovered they paid people to do that, called a consultant. So I wound up, helping a lot of people sort of structure and improve the processes of their own businesses. And, in the meantime, discovered that a lot of the techniques that I was discovering that got me to get rid of the pressure on my head and give me more space and room to think and be focused on the more meaningful things were techniques that actually work for everybody, all my clients and everybody that I was trying to help with their businesses and their professions and their careers and their lives. When I test out these techniques for myself and then turn around and use them with them, and 100% created the same result: more space, more control, more focus, more ability to kind of do what they wanted to do. So that's a very short version of a very long story. There was no one overnight epiphany about all that. It was really blow by blow, foot by foot, step by step, figuring this stuff out. And then at some point, I had the opportunity to design, a training for a large corporation around what I'd uncovered. And then that worked very well. And then, as I got involved in the corporate training and development world, taking this methodology that I'd uncovered and packaging it and distributing it as a seminar, as an educational model in a lot of the big corporate world in the U.S. And it was successful. I was not particularly entrepreneurial myself or highly aspirational to build a huge business. That wasn't my particular interest. I'm more of an educator than anything else. But it worked. And as I say, it took me 25 years to sort of figure out that what I'd figured out was unique and that nobody else had done it, and that it was bulletproof. So in 2001, I wrote the book, Getting Things Done.
That's awesome.
And then that sort of took this, it sort of moved what I was doing onto the global stage, and then trying to figure out what to do with that has been the next chapter of my game.
That's awesome. And I guess what was it like for you, at that point of releasing your book, and I guess having a model of what you found to work really well, and then seeing it contagiously catch on for everyone else and seeing those results was a pretty big shift for you in your life and your career at that point?
It was really. I mean, Allan, it was really a milestone for me. I didn't know that I could put me into a book. I knew from my own, thousands of hours of experience just one-on-one coaching people and consulting with people that if I had time with people and they invested in me, I could sort of get them into this awareness of this methodology about, how do you create space in your head and sort of get on top of your world instead of feel buried by it. So I knew that, but I didn't know if I could transfer this or translate this into some sort of virtual medium so that people, without being involved with me directly, could actually get it. So that was a big milestone for me when I first published the first edition of Getting Things Done in 2001. It landed on a bookshelf in Barnes and Nobles, and that weekend I got an email from a lady back in Philadelphia, and she said, "By the way, David, I just got your book off the shelf. I read it, I implemented it this weekend, changed my life." I went, "Yes!" That's a big milestone. I said, "Wow, okay, I guess I can maybe put this in some sort of virtual form." So that indeed was a big change, and realizing that I actually could do that. But that was pretty late on, I guess, in my career to actually make that discovery. And then since then, it's been trying to figure out, okay, how do we take this and scale it globally?
No, that's awesome. And I think it's such a critical thing. Like I was just saying to you earlier, I think that a lot of people, they all have a sense that they need something like this to actually do a bit of a self-audit on where the time's going and actually think shit, how can I disrupt how I currently work and start to free up my time? Because, we all say time's our most valuable commodity, but I think a lot of us, we just take it for granted that there's a set amount of time in a day and we got to fill it with something, and it's got to be either work or chores or whatever, instead of, if I start to shave a bit of time off here and here, I can begin to take on completely different things that actually I find fulfilling or will get me ahead. But, I think a lot of us just don't have that epiphany yet, or that realization that, we can do that.
Yeah, and you don't need time, you need space. It doesn't take any time to have a good idea. It doesn't take any time to have a creative idea about, what you want to do with that graphic or that spin on the website or that thing. That doesn't take time. It doesn't take any time to be creative or innovative or present or loving or, any of that cool stuff, all the golden goodies we think we would like more of or like to have, to be a successful, all-on kind of person. Those don't require time, but they do require something. They require room in your head. if you're taking one project into the next in your mind, if you're taking home to work in your mind, if you're taking work to home in your mind, you're not present. If you're on your smartphone while your daughter's out there playing soccer, I'm sorry, you're not being a parent. So the whole idea about how do I create room? How do I create the space in my mind where I can be fully present with wherever I am and what I'm doing? That's, I think, the key element. And that's really what people are after. I need room to be able to think strategically. I need room to think about my next gig and what I want to be doing out there in the world. I need room to be able to, step back or step up and think at some higher little horizon, at least, about what I'm about and where I'm going and what I want to do right now. That's hard to do if you still have a bunch of open loops, a bunch of things you've committed to handle and deal with and whatever, and you're not appropriately engaged with them. So, Allan, I mean, to anybody listening to this, the key to getting things done is really not so much about getting things done. It's really about being appropriately engaged with all those commitments you've got in your life. You need cat food, you need a life, you want a new life partner, you need a new printer, you're researching whether you want a new cell phone service or not. All those things down in the mundaneness of life, oftentimes those things are the things that most sort of grab your attention and your energy and keep you from having the space to think about the stuff you want to think about.
I think it's really cool the way you describe it too, by saying you need space. It kind of gives it a bit more of a physical sense that, time or our priorities do require some physical space to be put into, rather than it being I need more time, which is such an arbitrary thing. So even just by describing it using words like that, it makes a lot more sense that I need to create space in my schedule, create space in my life for these things to happen.
Time is a critical element to our existence here, just like oxygen is. It's like breathing is important, so is time. But you can't do much about that. It's just how are you breathing and how are you using your time? So it's not so much about getting more or less of it. It's about what are you doing with you in the midst of it.
That's right, quality time. And for you, I mean, obviously you've coached a lot of people and you've affected a lot of people's lives. So, I mean, what are some of the common, bad habits that people tend to have in their life when they're really starting to want to make some change?
Oh, gee, Allan. Well, look, they're
I'm giving you
probably
a loaded gun right now.
there are 4 key elements that you have to employ to get your kitchen under control or get your consciousness under control. And any one of those could be where you fall off. The first key element is you have to identify, wait a minute, what's pulling in your attention? What's distracting you? What's got your attention right now? So capturing is step 1. And the first problem people have is they're using their head as their office, and your head's a shitty office. It wasn't designed to do that. It didn't evolve to keep track of, remember, remind, or even prioritize. Your brain evolved to be able to survive on the savannah or in the jungle or wherever, where you could notice a snake and thunderstorms and berries and you have an incredible machine in your head that can recognize patterns in your current reality. But you go to the store to buy lemons and you come back with 6 things and no lemons. So, what happened? Well, you tried to give your brain the job of remembering and reminding, but it wasn't designed to do that. So the first problem most people have is they're using their head as their office for their life, for their work, for everything in terms of trying to keep track of, remember, remind, prioritize, think about what do they need to handle or whatever. And your brain wasn't designed to do that. So that's the first mistake people make, is keeping that stuff internal. The second mistake people make is even if they make a list, they write down, budget or mom or bank or doctor or whatever. Right. Well, great. You captured something that's got your attention, but then you haven't decided what exactly you're going to do about those things, if anything. Why did you write down mom? You had one. Why did you write it down? Oh, her birthday's coming. Well, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Yeah, well, that's the problem. So, what's your commitment? Are you going to give her a birthday party? Yeah, I'm going to give her. Okay, now you got a project. What's the next step? Oh, God, I should call my sister and see what she thinks about it. Great. So now you have an outcome. Give mom a party, and a next action. Call your sister. But what you did was you now clarified something that most people haven't actually clarified. Most people listening to this, if they had a to-do list at all, if you look down at that list, you won't see actions or outcomes. You'll see something that just identifies an issue or something that needs some change or something being done about it, but it's not clarified yet in terms of what that needs to be. So that's the second problem most people have, is they haven't identified what they should do about the stuff that's got their attention. So capture it first, clarify it second. Third thing is, even if they decide I need to call my sister, but they didn't write it down somewhere that they'll see it when they have a phone in time, they're disorganized. Now that stuff went back in their brain. So step 3 is organize the results of that thinking so that you can trust the external brain, essentially. That'll remind you of what you need to be reminded of.
Mhm.
And the fourth problem is, even if people have done all that, they captured, clarified, and organized their stuff, they don't look at it. They haven't stepped up and looked at all the calls they need to make, all the things coming up on their calendar, all the things they need to talk to their life partner about, all the things that they need to, all the errands they need to run. They're not looking at the contents of the results of that thinking process. And so if any one of those drops out, you haven't captured, you haven't clarified, you haven't organized, or you haven't reflected or reviewed your stuff, you'll be driven by latest and loudest. Good luck.
Like that. I guess like for me, like one of my habits I've had in the past, and I've gotten a lot better these days, but I've always been a pen and paper guy, and I would start writing my notes, and this would be like, okay, what am I setting out to do today? And bit by bit, that list of notes would get so big that eventually I'd start writing on like the side of the page around the corner in little tiny writing, and essentially writing like a month of work to do on that day. And the most depressing thing is you could cross off half that list and you're still going to feel depressed because you obviously haven't tackled all the tasks you set out to do. So what do people do if they're overloading themselves and not really having a realization that they're actually doing that, and they're giving themselves way too much they could ever actually get off of their list on any given day or week?
Oh, a very simple answer. Grow up.
All right, I'll
Hey,
take
come
note
on.
of that.
Most people listening to this have between 100 and 200 next actions on all the moving parts of the things they're committed to do. Stuff they need to buy at the store, things they need to talk to their life partner about, things they need to draft on the computer. Come on. So what? You go to a big grocery store when you have a nice party because you've got lots of options of things to pick from. So a big list of all the things that you have possible to do that will move things forward in your life you're committed to. What's wrong with that? Most people think because they commit to it, they have to do it right away. Wrong answer. You're committing to it to do it as soon as you can, as appropriate, given all the other things that are, true in your life. So, you need to get used to a whole lot of things that you would like to move forward on and make progress on. And it's just a menu like in a restaurant. So you pick from the ones that you want to do right now and feel okay about what you're not doing. You just need to be comfortable about what you're not doing. So you need to make sure you have that inventory complete.
I like that. And what about batching tasks, errands, things like that, like smaller things? Do you think it's important to maybe put aside time for all the smaller things to get done together? Or is it okay to have like the more steady flow of interruptions throughout the day?
Yes.
I love how you give me those curveballs. It's
You know what? Whatever the hell you want to do. Sometimes the best thing to do is have a whole day to do all the secondary, dumb, dorky things you need to do. Get batteries for that, and you need to handle that, you need to do whatever. And sometimes that's the best thing to do, is just spend a day handling all those nitty-gritty, dorky things that you still need to do, and just grouping those together so it's more efficient. Yeah, that works.
I am definitely... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So a lot of this is like, make as few rules as you can get by with. If you do what you feel like doing, but make sure that you don't waste your time. You don't want to go out to do and get one thing from the hardware store and then go back and realize there were 3 other things you should have gotten there. That's just stupid. So you need to make sure you've collected, all the things you need to do in these various contexts. And then you can decide whether you want to spend time on the phone, whether you want to go out for errands, whatever you want to do. So, once you get your act together with this methodology, just do what you feel like doing.
Cool. No, I like that. And I definitely give you setting up a few obvious ones here, but at the same time, I think that for some people, they're the kind of things that unless it kind of gets mentioned, they don't really realize like, oh, wait, I'm doing that all the time. Like you said, like, let's say going to the bank and then later in the day having to go to, the post office right next door, not thinking, hey, if I actually batch these smaller things up, then that's one trip getting it all done. And by batching up all my phone calls, suddenly that's 10 minutes instead of 1 hour, accumulatively, like all the simple things that we kind of take for granted. But for some people, I feel like it's efficient. It's important to point out just, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm doing that too, and I should be a bit more careful with my time.
No kidding. Yeah. And that takes on multiple levels. So yeah, down the mundane level about the errands you need to run, to what are the things I need to talk to my, life partner about to make sure we move our business of life forward appropriately. What are the things I need to talk to my boss about? to make sure that, he or she and I are clear about what my job description is and what I need to be doing next, given this last change that just showed up in the company.
That's a good point too. And do you believe in like flow state, like especially for creatives? Do you think it's important that we have dedicated non-interrupted time to get into the zone on certain tasks? So maybe it's important to have, 2 hours of space set aside for certain things rather than giving ourselves like smaller blocks of time where obviously our attention isn't fully in it and gotten really into a chance to make a big impact on what we're doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is very quite dependent and unique to each project. I mean, I'm just starting to do acrylic painting myself now.
That's great.
And, I keep that right in front of me. And there are times I start on a painting and I go, I don't feel like doing anything else. Let me go see if I can add a cloud or add the shadow to the clouds right now. And I may take 15 or 20 minutes to do that. And that's it. I don't need any more than that. And so it's kind of nice to be able to pick and choose how much time you want to spend where with a free consciousness about it. And to your point, sometimes when I was writing my first book, man, it took me a year or two to really realize I needed at least 4 hours of uninterrupted time to be able to get into the flow of the thought process. Otherwise, I stepped on my own toes. I rewrote things. I wrote things. I duplicated thoughts. It was stupid. And it took me a long time to realize that was the kind of space and time I needed for that kind of creative process. So I think it's individual, Allan, to the unique, specific creative process that you're doing, whether or not that's something you can do in little ad hoc between the lines moments and add to and add value to it, or whether you truly need to block the time to be able to do that. But I don't think you can create any one rule about that for anything.
That's cool. And how are you finding acrylic painting so far?
I love it. Absolutely love it.
It's a good outlet for just kind of switching off and doing something creative.
Yeah, I've kind of had that on my mind for a long time and have always loved playing with sort of visual expression, of stuff. And quite a challenge. I've taken 3 classes now with Brian Baumeister, who's just an incredible guy. If any of you ever get a chance to work with Brian, he's the son of Edwards, the lady who wrote Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain. And, he's a professional artist in New York, and he does fabulous classes. So I've taken a sketch class and a drawing class and a color class with Brian. And that helped kind of get me started and give me the impetus to say, okay, let me just go get a bunch of paints and get an easel and sit down and start. So I'm kind of training myself in that process. It's really fun. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, my fiance, she's an artist, does a lot of acrylic painting and a lot of pencil sketches as well. And that's one thing with me is like, it might end up being 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And I go up to say like, hey, you want me to cook some dinner? But if I can hear the music blasting away, I can tell she's in the zone, and I probably won't see her the rest of the night. But at the same time, like when she does get in the zone, then that's where I don't want to interrupt. I want her to just, look at the watch when it's like 2 a.m. and be like, oh crap, because I want to respect that and make sure she makes the most of that time. I think it's important for all of us. And for you just moved to Amsterdam. Well, not just, but you've relocated to Amsterdam. Is that right?
Yep, 3 years ago. Yeah.
So is that because of bicycles or for me? I
a
guess
gazillion reasons. It really kind of it was a perfect storm. A lot of things. My wife and I wanted to sort of get out of the U.S., have a different point of view, maybe and move to Europe. My work was becoming more global, so it was kind of nice to be more in the center of the world. Amsterdam was much more the center of the world than Santa Barbara was in terms of the, things going on. And we'd fallen in love with Amsterdam. We'd been there, 2 or 3 times just as tourists and visitors. And it could have been anywhere as long as I'm near an airport, given the work that I do. And so we said, oh, what the heck? So we just threw a dart and said, Amsterdam's cheaper than London. It's warmer than Stockholm. It's kind of hipper than any other place. It's really the San Francisco of Europe. So we love San Francisco, but this is the same size, but it's even more informal and more village-like than San Francisco is. So we absolutely fell in love with the city, fell in love with the Dutch, fell in love with the country. The lifestyle, the quality of life here is wonderful. People take care of themselves. And it's a wonderful place. So yeah, we love it.
It's cool. And it's funny you say that because usually everyone describes San Francisco obviously as the Europe of America, you know what I mean? So it's kind of good to see
Yeah.
it on the flip side. Yeah, I've been asked a bunch of times to go speak in, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but Utrecht, just down the road, which
Mhm.
yeah, I've been meaning to make it out there for a while, but again, that's a nice city for with a pretty massive art background. And just switching back around, but like one thing I was curious about is there any tools or and obviously this is more getting to the gritty, but any tools or things that you rely on or recommend for people to structure their day, to structure their week, to kind of manage their time a bit better, or at least be aware
Well,
of where the
first of all,
time's going.
absolutely critical tool is pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
No Wi-Fi, no batteries. You need to be able to capture ideas and thoughts, as they occur to you. One of my big champions was a, major rock star guitarist and producer. And his capture function was just capturing song ideas on his smartphone. So at the end of the week, he would then, run them back and then decide what to do with them. Mine is a pen and paper that just have a little note taker wallet that I carry with me to capture ideas wherever out. So the idea of capturing, potentially relevant, but no decision about it, no prioritizing, no organizing, just capture that thing, get it out of your head to begin with as a raw piece of data that's potentially meaningful. That's step one. So those kind of tools, anything you have, if you don't have them already, you need to get one and have it, because your best ideas won't happen where you're going to implement the idea. So you need to have a tool that's, gives you the ability to have a distributed good idea and capture it and get it into your system. And then, then I have a physical in basket, an in tray that I throw all my notes, and then when I get time and get into the frame of mind to do it, I then empty that in tray by going through all those notes and going, okay, what is this? Is there a next step I need to do about this? What can I do, et cetera? So then I need to go through the clarifying process to decide actions and outcomes of the things that I've, captured. And then the result of that then shows up in some sort of list. I need a list of errands. I need a list of stuff to talk to my wife about. I need a list of my projects, et cetera. And so I have a list manager, and that's really the only tool you need to really organize yourself, is anything that manages lists. And you could do that in a paper-based system with a paper-based planner with just pages. You could have a page called errands. You could have a page called calls to make. You could have a page called stuff to talk to my wife or my husband or my partner about. So just anything that manages lists, and there are hundreds and hundreds of list managers that have shown up actually since my book got written that basically, say, hey, here's the GTD way to do it. And they're all just list managers, basically. And, lots of different bells and whistles on those things. But anything that manages lists, we still use IBM Notes, for our company email and calendar and so forth. And so I just have a way to reconfigure the task inside of IBM Notes that are my lists. But, I used the Palm before that. I used a paper-based planner for 20 years before that. Any of those work,
Cool.
As long as you work them and as long as you like them, as long as they're alive and well and you use them.
Yeah, I think it's an important message is that, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether, you're using Notepad or WordPad or Microsoft Word, Google Docs. It's there's no difference. Like no one tool is going to magically unscrew your day if you're not putting in the effort yourself. It's kind of like with Stephen King, when someone in the audience once asked him, what pen do you write with, as if that's going to have an impact on their writing. You just got to look at the obvious, which is started and he's going. Do you think?
And at the same time, you want your cool pen. And so the strange paradox is it doesn't matter what tool you have, but once you really get this methodology, you really want the coolest tool. So I understand that.
I like my big pen that I bought 200 of from Amazon for like $10. It does the job, I always found the more expensive the pen, the more times it breaks down on me. So I'm going for the basics. But do you think, like, in the beginning too, it's important to maybe do a bit of a self audit on where your time goes? I mean, that's one thing I was talking about the other day, is that I think that in a way, time and finances are the same there. That everyone's always freaking out that they need a pay rise, but they really need to kind of sit down and say, well, where's all my money going? Because it doesn't matter how much I have coming in if I've got all these holes leaking out all the cash. And the same thing if we're not aware that maybe we're spending so much time on Facebook, being the obvious one, or even just not putting in time where we should, watching TV, or just even meetings, things like that, eating up a lot of our time that might be necessary.
Yes and no, Alan. I mean, sure, getting a grip on current reality never hurts. And that's always going to improve your awareness of your situation and make you more adult about what you're doing. At the same time, who cares how much time you're spending on social media if you're getting the right things done? If you're spending 10 minutes of the day doing the really quality thing you need to do, then hey, screw it. Spend the rest of your day having fun, surf on email, just, play video games, whatever. So I don't think I don't think anybody should create any rules for themselves about that other than, well, come on, dude. What do you need to do to feel comfortable about what you're doing? And so, yes, it's nice to be aware that, hey, God, I just spent the last 2 hours surfing, Facebook or something and ran down a rabbit hole and probably shouldn't have done that because there's these other things I need to do. Yeah, come on, that's just being adult and mature about, what you're doing and so forth. So, but trying to build some template and some program that tracks all of that, I've never seen anybody do that to any successful degree ever. Just there's just too much thinking you have to do to try to input the process to improve your process. Forget it. You really need to sit down and just get organized about, wait a minute, let me get all the stuff that has my attention out of my head. Let me clarify next actions about all that. Let me make sure I've got lists of all the things that I've committed to do and the next steps I need to do about them. And then sit down and make a mature decision about whether you want to have a beer or make that phone call or, draft that next, graphic you need to do or what. And it's never been any more or less than that for me.
I love the consistent theme here I'm starting to get, which is just grow up and be responsible, take responsibility back for your day, which, I think is a pretty solid piece of advice.
And most people want these templates about manage my time, manage my priorities. They want some sort of silver bullet out there. And it's just a way basically to be immaturely, not take accountability from moment to moment, make good decisions about what you're doing.
It's kind of like the gym membership. It's like, well, I bought it, so I don't need to do any working out anymore because, my abs are in the mail, basically. No, I like that. And obviously, from whatever you can disclose, but I'd love to hear, you've got a lot of different clients and I'm sure a lot of stories, case studies, and maybe aha moments that have come up over your many years of consulting with, both big firms as well as individuals. Is there anything that you can talk about or stories that you think that were pretty vital that could help us a lot or you just found interesting?
Well, I think particularly for your audience, Allan, that a lot of people think, well, look, getting organized and somehow getting your act together relative to this is going to work up against my spontaneous, creative, artistic, intuitive process, right? Mm-hmm. Well, some of my biggest champion are Will Smith, Joss Whedon, Robert Downey Jr., Howard Stern. Ask any of these people how much this process helped them. Now, all of those people I just named, they've been publicly, the reason I name them is because they publicly, said stuff about my stuff. Mm-hmm. But every one of those is also managing businesses in addition to their, creative, and artistic outputs and expressions. So, but the degree to which people say, well, look, I don't need any structure because I want to be spontaneous. Said, look, spontaneity is almost directly proportional to your ability to create appropriate structure. So you're free to be spontaneous, right? So people say, well, I don't fence me in. I've said, well, what do you think about the line in the middle of the road out there on the highway? Oh, I like that. Why? Well, it gives me the freedom to be able to think about other things while I'm driving instead of thinking about somebody's going to cross the road and hit me. No kidding. So, is structure constraining or is it liberating? So I think that's the key question you need to ask. What structure do I need so I don't have to worry about my bank account? So I don't have to worry about this. So I have the freedom to just walk over to my easel pad and start to draw or boot the computer and just play, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the key probably message I would have for the, quote, creative audience, that are involved in the creative fields is, you've got to know that having the right structure, or come on, managing, whatever graphic tool you have on your computer, getting that structured down so that you weren't bothered by the structure. And so you could actually use the structure. That's the whole point of all this, right? But you can't just sit at the computer and just, boot whatever your, graphic software is and just start to play and feel comfortable about that. You got to get your act together. So there's no difference from that with any other aspect of your life. Just aspects of it you have to get together sufficiently so that you're freed up, to get your mind focused on and freed up to be able to give it the freedom to think about and to range around the nothingness where the inspiration comes from.
I like that. And yeah, I agree that setting kind of limitations or at least structuring yourself around having those guidelines at least helps you not exhaust yourself by having to think about too many variables, because that way you know what's in front of you and get a lot more focused.
Yeah, and it's hard to make a painting without some edges.
I like that too. Yeah, because that's actually a perfect metaphor for it. And one thing I was just going to touch on was, and I know we're putting a lot of focus on specifically on GTD, getting things done, but with chapter 14, talking more about the cognitive science, do you want to discuss anything with that, as well as just any kind of additional discoveries or just discussions around that subject?
Well, just the basic truth is your head's for having ideas, not for holding them. And back to my point that most people are still using their head as their office. They're still trying to keep track of stuff, remember, remind, prioritize, create relationships between the calls they need to make or the people they need to talk to or the things they need to handle, and trying to keep that all in their head. You're screwed. And the cognitive scientists have now validated if you have more than 4 potentially meaningful things in your head, you'll be driven by the latest and loudest, and you'll denigrate your performance, period. So that's kind of the bottom line. I've known that just experientially and certainly in my experience with clients and myself and whatever for the last 35 years, as I've sort of uncovered this methodology about keeping stuff out of your head and, managing it appropriately. And now the cognitive scientists have just sort of validated the fact that, hey, no kidding, managing this appropriately outside of your head is absolutely critical these days if you want to keep a clear, consciousness.
I love that. And yeah, it makes total sense. So what do you have coming up? Like, what are some of the big things you're working on at the moment?
Well, we have a book coming out probably by the end of this year on this methodology, getting things done for teens, because teenagers, for the most part, have not been trained about what to do when they leave home and leave school, and how do they manage their life. I mean, mom is no longer a trusted system. So how do you keep track of what you need to do and whatever? And a lot of kids get blown by the winds of fate when they run out into the world and haven't been trained about how to manage themselves. So that's the next project, is just to get that book out. We're spreading our methodology. We have certified trainers now around the world that are training with this methodology in the U.S. and Canada, and as well as around the world. So helping support those partners with the methodology and supporting the community of practice of the trainers around the world, to keep abreast of this technology and motivated, et cetera. So that's a lot of what I'm doing now. And my next painting, don't know what to paint yet, but I've got a blank canvas staring at me right across the room right now. So
I like that. That's cool. Well, you have to get a separate Instagram account specifically for your art.
Yeah.
That's cool. And yeah, just in general, again, I want to thank you just because it is a big subject, and I'm sure it's one that you get hammered with questions all the time specifically about it. But again, I think it's just so vital for a lot of us who we always struggle to find time. And as you've really beaten into it, I think that it really comes down to just structuring your life and actually taking the initiative to do it, rather than find excuses around why you can't take care of your day-to-day tasks that keep overwhelming you. So I think it's really great.
People need to pay attention to what has their attention and give it appropriate attention. If you need cat food, don't let that pop into your mind twice. Write it on a post-it on your refrigerator. So if somebody gets cat food, in a sense, it's that simple. If you need to balance your bank account, if you need to research a new job, if you need to update your CV, if you need to, talk to your boss about a particular issue or problem, get a grip on those things. Decide what you need to do about them. Don't let them bang around in your consciousness, eating away at your energy.
No, I love it. That's great. And where can people go to find out more about you?
Gettingthingsdone.com. It's a great place. And, Getting Things Done, the book, the revised edition, should be available in all good bookstores. So
yeah, I'll definitely link to it. This has been great. Again, thank you for taking time out, and enjoy your glass of wine. I'll let you get back to your evening.
Thanks, Allan. Take care.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Again, thank you to David for taking the time out to discuss and share a lot of his insights. Again, I hope you got a lot from this. If you want to check out the show notes, visit allanmckay.com/94. So the number's 94. And you'll also be able to get access to any links we mentioned in the episode, and also links to how to find out more about David Allan. So that is it for this episode. Next episode, I'll be speaking with Nathan Fowlkes, who has a background working for DreamWorks, Blue Sky, Disney, and is a really amazing artist I got to share the stage with in Paris earlier this year, which was a lot of fun. And I'm going to leave it there for now. So again, thanks to David Allan, and I'll be back next episode with Nathan Fowkes. Rock on.